Despite Donkey Kong Bonanza's story being pretty straightforward, there are tiny details sprinkled throughout the game that leave a huge impact on the Donkey Kong lore. Yeah, that's surprisingly a thing, and while it's easier to understand than, let's say, The Legend of Zelda's contrived and convoluted timeline, there are still things in which I'll go into in a bit that might need a certain point of view to understand. Assuming you've heeded the massive spoiler warning at the beginning of the video, let's talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza's setting. As you might have guessed, the climax of this game takes place in New Donk City, which, given Pauline's 13 years old, makes this a prequel to Super Mario Odyssey. Not a direct prequel that leads into Mario's adventure to save Princess Peach obviously, but it does give players an idea of what Pauline went through before becoming the mayor of New Donk City. Donkey Kong Bonanza establishes, through many references and Dixie Kong outright mentioning past adventures, that Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, 3, and Donkey Kong 64 take place before this game. What you might find interesting though is that there's very few to no references to Donkey Kong Country Returns or Tropical Freeze. From my experience, this happens usually because those games haven't happened yet, and if Nintendo wanted to establish that, they'd be clever to hide any references to those games. But that doesn't seem to hold up here because you could argue that the pig fossils found in the forest layer are a nod to Professor Chops, who first appeared in Donkey Kong Country Returns. Another thing to consider is the way King K. Rool makes his grand return. He makes a big deal about how he's back in action, which, given his last appearance in the Donkey Kong game was back in 2007/2008, is between 17 to 18 years out of action. So for Bonanza to take place a short time after Donkey Kong 64 doesn't make much sense. It's even stated by a Fractone in the Forbidden Layer that a surface dweller long ago never returned when seeking the Bonandium route. You find out shortly after that K. Rool, along with the Kremlins, were sealed away. Given the timeline of events, this would explain why there isn't a trace of the Kremlins in Donkey Kong Country Returns or Tropical Freeze. Sure, Retro Studios, who made the new Donkey Kong Country games, stated they just wanted to differentiate themselves from the Rare trilogy by creating new antagonists. But it's nice for Nintendo to come around and give us a creative in-universe explanation to the Kremlin's absence after all these years. Moving on, let's talk about Pauline. Is she supposed to be the same one from the original Donkey Kong? Well, surprisingly, Super Mario Odyssey seems to suggest that she is. From acknowledging that she and Mario are old friends, and that one of the questions about her tells how she was captured by an ape long ago and thanks Mario for remembering that traumatizing event. But whoa, hang on a minute. I don't claim to be a lore master or anything, but how the hell is this the same Pauline from the arcade game? As stated earlier, Bonanza makes it very clear that Donkey Kong happens before that game, with references like the planet core fossils resembling the 8-bit barrel, 8-bit items, and even 8-bit Donkey Kong himself. There's a whole nostalgia level based on the Donkey Kong arcade, complete with flaming barrels, pink girders and blue ladders. And if the OG Donkey Kong himself, Cranky Kong, making an appearance and even referencing his rivalry with Mario didn't sell it to you, then I don't know what will. Bottom line, it's indisputable that Donkey Kong happens before Donkey Kong Bonanza, so this Pauline cannot be the same character as the original given her age difference between Bonanza and Super Mario Odyssey. My intuition leads me to believe that when Pauline mentions she was captured by an ape in Odyssey, maybe she's not referring to Cranky Kong, but maybe Voidco via Grumpy Kong. Because let's be honest, being kidnapped and turned into a purple rock and sent hurtling into a sinkhole, and then relying on an ape to get you back home while fighting off a greedy corporation, being eaten by a giant Harmonial, then having to go toe to toe with a demented Crocodile King, is probably more traumatic than being kidnapped in a classic Beauty and the Beast love triangle situation. And especially having to go through all that while still a child, it's impressive that Pauline managed to buckle through and not only become the singing performer that she is, but also the mayor of New Donk City. So if you believe in what I'm saying and that this is a different Pauline, then what became of the original? Well, there's a quote that young Pauline mentions while diving through a sinkhole that she needs to get back home to her grandma. I would like to assume that this grandma is the original Pauline and young Pauline's grandmother. This would make a lot of sense given how Cranky Kong is Donkey Kong's grandpa, and that would match them being in the same generation. Now you're probably thinking off the back of that, what does that mean for Mario? It's always been believed that Jumpman and Mario are the same person, but if Cranky Kong and Pauline's grandma share the same generation, how would Mario fit into that? If only there was a Mario game or a series of games that might create the possibility that Jumpman and Mario are two different people. Kinda like the Yoshi Island games, perhaps? Oh yes, I'm going there. I decree that Jumpman and Mario are not the same person. Jumpman is presumably Mario's granddad, and Mario's adventure starts when he's a baby in Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Oh and wait, if you factor in Yoshi's Island DS, baby Donkey Kong makes an appearance, and this is the Donkey Kong we know from Donkey Kong Country onwards. So with all that in mind, allow me to map out a hypothetical timeline. First, you have the arcade Donkey Kong, 2 generations later, the Yoshi Island games take place, then the Donkey Kong Country games, and then the Super Mario games. It's up in the air whether the Super Mario games take place after or alongside the Donkey Kong games, but either way, what is clear is that Donkey Kong Bananza happens before Super Mario Odyssey. A lot to take in, I know, but it's crazy how this surge of world building ideas has suddenly surfaced, all because of a familiar character that appears in a game at a specific age. It's quite phenomenal. A final thought to think about is this: what does the future hold for new entries in the Donkey Kong or Super Mario series? Well, I'm sure you know this already via Mario Kart and other Mario sports and party games, but it's nice that Donkey Kong Bonanza reminds us that these two main series of Mario and Donkey Kong games are interconnected. Despite King K. Rool being blasted into the stratosphere Team Rocket style, he is essentially free from his subterranean imprisonment, meaning he and the Kremlins may very well return. Whether that be in a new Donkey Kong Country game, making an appearance in Mario Kart, or possibly a Super Mario crossover game where K. Rool begrudgingly teams up with Bowser, the comedic potential between these two villains is just too good to pass up. But hey, if it means Mario teams up with Donkey Kong to kick some tail, I'll definitely be down for that. I think we can all agree though that we owe it to Donkey Kong Bonanza for not only re-establishing King K. Rool and the Kremlins, but for further intertwining the Mario and Donkey Kong series and leading the way to a much less limiting and more exciting future for this shared universe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.